My HOA laughed at me when I built a flood wall. Well, a few years later, that same HOA was begging for my help when a river threatened to wipe out our entire neighborhood. Let me tell you how it all went down. About 5 years ago, my wife and I bought our dream home. It was perfect in every way but one. It was right next to a river. Now, the real estate agent swore up and down that the river hadn't flooded in over 100 years. But I am a better safe than sorry kind of guy. I've seen what can happen. And I wasn't about to risk our life savings on a century-old promise. So, I decided to build a flood wall on our property. I spent months researching, consulting with engineers, and getting all the necessary permits from the city. The wall I designed was a serious piece of work, a thick, reinforced concrete structure. About 3 feet high, with a deep foundation. It wasn't cheap, costing me almost $30,000, but for my family's safety, it was a price I was willing to pay. That's when the trouble with the HOA started. The moment we broke ground, I got a cease and desist letter. Karen, the head of the HOA, was furious. She said my ugly concrete bunker violated a dozen aesthetic bylaws. I explained the wall was for flood protection, but she just scoffed. I remember her exact words. The river hasn't flooded in a century. You're just wasting your money and ruining the neighborhood's look. The HOA took me to court. It was a stressful, expensive battle. They brought in so-called experts who called my wall excessive and unnecessary. I presented my engineering reports and city permits. The judge, thankfully, was a reasonable person. He looked at all the evidence and ruled in my favor, stating that my right to protect my property from a potential natural disaster outweighed the HOA's aesthetic concerns. For the next few years, I was the neighborhood outcast. Karen and her crew would give me dirty looks every time they passed by. People would whisper about my ridiculous fortress. My wall became the local joke, but I didn't care. Every time a storm rolled in, I felt a sense of security that was worth more than their approval. Then came the storm of the century. Forecasters called for unprecedented rainfall, and the river was projected to rise to historic levels. The entire city was on high alert. Evacuation orders were issued for low-lying areas, including our neighborhood. As the water began to rise, panic set in. My neighbors started frantically stacking sandbags, but it was too little, too late. The river swelled over its banks and began swallowing everything in its path. From my window, I watched in horror as the water crept up my neighbors' driveways, flooding their garages and seeping into their homes. But my property, it was completely dry. My $30,000 wall was holding back the river like a dam. The water came right up to the top, but not a single drop got through. My house and yard were a small, dry island in a sea of destruction. That's when my phone rang. It was Karen, the HOA president. Her voice was trembling. My house, it's completely flooded, she cried. The water is rising so fast. We're trapped. Please, can we come over to your house? It's the only dry place. What could I do? These were my neighbors, after all. I told her to come, but to be careful. A few minutes later, I saw them, Karen, her husband, and a few other families, wading through waist-deep water toward my home. I opened the gate, and they shuffled onto my dry lawn, looking defeated. They saw firsthand how the wall they ridiculed was now their only refuge. We sheltered about 15 people that night. We shared food, blankets, and a generator. No one mentioned the wall, but its presence was impossible to ignore. The next day, when the water receded, the devastation was shocking. Cars were overturned, homes were ruined, and the damage was estimated to be in the millions. My house was the only one in the entire area that was untouched. The flood cost the neighborhood over $2.4 million in damages. Many people lost everything, In the aftermath, the tone completely changed. The HOA was dissolved, Karen moved away. The people who stayed started asking me for advice on how to build their own flood walls. They weren't laughing anymore. Sometimes, being prepared isn't paranoid, it's just smart. Thanks for watching my story. If you've ever had a crazy HOA experience, drop it in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories. Stay safe out there.